Can Donald Trump unite the Republican Party? Joining us now are key conservatives. Jennifer Rubin is the author of the Washington Post's Right Turn. Dr. Russel Moore is president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. Leslie Sanchez is a Republican strategist and a contributor to our digital news network, CBSN. And Matt Schlapp is chairman of the American Conservative Union. Jennifer, I want to start with you. You wrote, or you said, that this was the worst week of the GOP's existence.
Yes.
Why?
It's about to come apart, and the lines are not necessarily only ideological. What is interesting is that you have, in support of Donald Trump, very conservative, very moderate, so-called establishment, non-establishment figures, and you have the same ideological mix very much opposed to him. And that, I think, is because fundamentally the problem with Donald Trump is not ideological. Yes, it is huge. Yes, it is vast. But it is really fundamentally an issue of character. When people look at Donald Trump and they see how he treats women, they see his views on foreigners, they see his lack of personal self-control, his meanness. Just this week, he was back lying again. He said that he had had extensive conversations with Marco Rubio about being vice president. Never spoke to him. He said he had called Paul Ryan after the New York primary to congratulate him. Never happened. It's those fundamental character issues that many Republicans cannot and will never get past.
Matt, how do you see it?
Well, I guess the Hillary Clinton brigade is going to run on morality and character, which I think is going to be an awfully tough lane for them. Obviously, her husband was impeached. She's under an investigation by the FBI. She is somebody who has been caught in scandal after scandal after scandal. What I would say to Jennifer and to others is, like, get real. You know, we often criticize Democrats for living on their emotions and thinking on their emotions, and we Republicans, we're supposed to think about just the facts. Here are the facts. In America, we elect Democrats or Republicans to the presidency, and you have to make a choice. You don't get to have your perfect candidate. We did that. We had 17 of them. Now we have our candidate. Is he better or worse philosophically than Hillary Clinton? You can make the argument, but people aren't going to go with you on that. He is clearly, for conservatives, the better choice.
He's not. He's unfit for the office, and you first have to look at that.
The Constitution doesn't say that.
He is unfit. He believes that we should sprinkle nuclear weapons around Europe and the Far East. He believes we don't have to stand by the sovereign debt of the United States. He is unfit. And Republicans do have a chance and a choice. And that's why this arrogant attitude that you have to be with me because I won the states is wrong. First of all, they have a choice to stay home. Secondly, they have a choice to form a third party. And I would say, John, that it's much more possible than many in the media believe to launch a
third party. Leslie, let me ask you. Conservatives for a long time have had to look at John McCain and Mitt Romney, and they've been told, well, that's your nominee, you deal with it. Well, why isn't it fine now for Donald Trump to say, Paul Ryan, I got a lot more votes than anybody would have thought. I beat all these veterans. You deal with it.
I think to some extent he's got a fair point. What I think the problem is a lot of people want to be invited to the party. They feel that there's not a communication between anybody at the campaign. As a matter of fact, it's an anemic campaign that doesn't have any recognizable faces, any political operatives, any money kind of operatives as well that know how to run the infrastructure of a national campaign. Let's just talk about winning, but then governance. What would that possibly look like? Very much to that point. But I do believe, kind of bridging these two together, that there can be another Alliance 2.0 that could actually work in terms of solidifying what those solutions could actually look like. Mitt Romney didn't do that. Nobody ever knew what he was talking about in 2012. I think that you can actually tether some of these reforms Donald Trump is talking about to real policy that can be moved on the Hill.
You're a bridge builder. Russell, let me ask you really quickly. Jennifer mentioned the character question.
Yes.
That for a long time, conservatives have talked about a cult of personality with people like Barack Obama. And they've also talked about the role a president has in the culture.
Yes.
Where do you think Donald Trump fits into voters who have made a big deal about that over the years?
Well, that's exactly the problem. One of the key aspects of conservatism is to say character matters in public office and in the citizenry, and that virtue has an important role to play in our culture and in our politics. And now we have a Republican Party that seems ready not only to surrender on the culture wars, but to join the other side. I mean, what we have in the Donald Trump phenomenon, as well as in the Hillary Clinton phenomenon is an embrace of the very kind of moral and cultural decadence that conservatives have been saying for a long time is the problem. And so when you have conservatives who were saying in the previous Clinton era that character matters, rightly so, who now are not willing to say anything when we have this sort of reality television moral sewage coming through all over our culture, and conservatives who previously said, we have too much awful cultural rot on television, who now want to put it on C-SPAN for the next 4 years and to give a model to our children, really with either of these two candidates, of an amoral sort of a vision of America that isn't what we believe in.
Is the rebuttal to that, Matt, it's about the court, that Donald Trump would pick somebody who's going to put conservatives on the Supreme Court, and therefore it's going to
That's true. It's about this other branch of government, but it's about something else, which is there are a lot of Republicans, increasingly large numbers, who have grown discouraged over the Republican strategy on those very issues. I would describe myself with you that the culture is incredibly important, and I want my president to be somebody we can look up to in terms of his character and his stance on these issues. But the fact is this: we have somehow lost Republicans and conservatives across this country who are sending Washington a very clear message. It's broken. It's not working. We're willing to try something else. And for all of you who think that there's a third-party option, I appreciate the fact that you're a journalist. These deadlines are passed. Texas is going to be passed. Texas is, let me finish. Texas is going to be passed here in a very short period of time. No one's going to be elected on the right without having Texas. And by the way, the last time we tried this, it was Ross Perot. You showed me the liberal Ross Perot supporter. It cost us the White House to Bill Clinton.
Is not to tell social conservatives just start keeping up with the Kardashians.
I agree.
Because you've been disappointed in the past, and that's what the Donald Trump campaign
I think
said.
for the leader of an organization that is the Conservative Action Party, it's a very bizarre position you're taking. You're simply saying, we're without conviction. This guy has the votes, so we're going to follow him. There are candidates and there are elected officers like Paul Ryan who got into politics because the content mattered. This isn't simply about winning, and it's a false hope. Let me just finish a minute. It's a false hope that you can win with this for exactly the demographic reasons we talked about. He maybe gets some new white working class voters, but the people he is losing overwhelmingly are women, are Hispanics, are married women. He cannot win with this formula. So chasing after someone without principles because it'll work will get you neither.
What about the Hispanic?
I think there's a couple different things. I think we're talking about the media game of projection of what could happen in November when we're still only in May. And I think we all realized how wrong we were in those perceptions. I think that a lot of ground can be made up depending on what the Trump campaign does moving forward. It's a really serious thing. I think this week when he had Taco Gate, hashtag Taco Gate.
Explain to people what Taco Gate is.
Well, that's what I'm calling it anyway. It's when he took this really ridiculous photo eating a taco salad, which is lovely, I'm sure, from Trump Tower. And he said, I love the best taco salads are in Trump Tower. I love taco salads.
This was to celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
To celebrate Cinco de Mayo, which is a Mexican holiday, it's a Mexican effort, not Hispanic. It was completely tone deaf. It would be like going into the Irish or Boston, neighborhoods with a shillelagh, and a green bowler. It makes absolutely no sense. And
although they do mention beer once as an Irishman, they do mention beer now and again.
But you can't have, this is not the 1960s where you had Viva Kennedy and you had you had the beer fest and the big beer buses coming out. That we have moved a long way from that. But John, the real critical point, in 1999, George W. Bush went out to Iowa, was doing Spanish print ads. He was organizing Latinos to come to the straw poll. By 2007, that was seen as a risky business. If we cannot get it together in terms of how we talk about an inclusive party, it's going to be obsolete moving forward.
Yes.
Right.
What does Trump do? I mean, how does he fix some of the challenges he has?
Look, I agree with many things Leslie's saying, which is he's got to court people. He has said things that have been patently offensive to all different types of people, and he's got to go out and get them back. I also think he's right when he realizes he's not going to get them all back, but he's got to do a lot better than what he's doing with conservatives and with Republicans. And he's going to bring in record numbers of independents, and I think he's going to make some of these, I love the fact that we're focusing on Republicans, but let's look at all those polls on the Democratic side where 30% of Bernie Sanders supporters are saying they don't want to support Clinton Incorporated. Here's what's going on in this country, right? there's a transformation of politics on both sides. And what I hate seeing is these elitists in Washington, D.C., who turn to the candidate who will have the most Republican votes in the history of the primary system, right? Where our turnout is up 63%. And they look at all those people across America and they say, no, we know better. We're going to rig the system and find a new candidate.
No, it's not rigging.
Stop. You're hurting the whole agenda.
It's not rigging the system. It's saying we don't have to go along. You may have gotten the votes. That's great. Get your nomination. But we don't have to vote for you. And listen, when you have 84% of the Republican Party behind you, you are going to lose overwhelmingly. We have not had a Republican who has won the presidency with less than 91% of the Republican vote. It doesn't need...
Jennifer, we haven't had a vote yet. We haven't even had a vote. You think it's all over. It's not over.
Yeah, the demographics, I think, are over.
Russell, there was a worry during the George W. Bush years about the evangelicals who stayed home in his election in 2000. Is that a worry here for Donald Trump?
It completely is, especially when you're looking at under 50 evangelicals who are looking and saying we cannot in good conscience support either of these two candidates, because what we end up with at the end of the day is one sexual revolutionary party that is hostile to everything that we believe in. Now, the question going on right now is, what then do we do? And so I think there are going to be some conservative evangelicals who vote for Trump because they believe the Supreme Court is on the line and they feel guilty for doing that. There are going to be many other evangelicals who simply don't vote in that election, or who find a third-party candidate or a write-in candidate to vote for, not because they think that candidate will win, but because they think there's something more important than politics, which is one's conscience.
The Supreme Court, I think, is a phony issue. We don't have any idea what kind of justice that Donald Trump is going to support. Look at the people he surrounds himself, and you believe him? He changes his mind 3 days, out of 4. He is completely unreliable and unpredictable. It's not simply one seat. There may be others. And do you really trust this man to choose anything? I think it's completely a pipe dream to think he's going to pick conservatives for the court.
I think it's really important to keep in mind this is going to be a comparative election. This is not an isolation. This is against Hillary Clinton, the presumptive nominee.
Right.
So you're talking about flip-flops on every issue. Let's just look at about open borders and amnesty. She's had every side of that issue. She's trying to navigate and court the Latino community. And just kind of bring it back to Latino again, there's a lot of frustration and anxiety with Donald Trump, but there is open ground when people talk about border enforcement. You have a lot of Latinos that say
although his negatives, but the Latinos are close to 80%.
High, but he's picking up conservative Democrat Latinos, so who are former military. Right. So it's mixed, John, is what I'm saying.
What about that unpredictability point, Matt, in terms of down ballot Republicans? I'm a Republican running in a purple state. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Ryan, Ted Cruz won his district by double digits. And the reason why Paul Ryan's doing what he's doing is because he's got lots of members coming to talk to him. I don't want to be ignorant of the fact that Donald Trump has serious issues with Republicans. Let's put him out on the table and let's deal with him. But the fact is this, which is at the end of the day, in America, there's a choice here. And any Republican or conservative who doesn't stand with Donald Trump as a nominee is simply helping Hillary Clinton. We've been there. We've done that. This country's going to be in scandal immediately. It's how they play the game. They think there's a second set of rules. If you care about the Second Amendment, if you care about the unborn, if you care about the size and scope of government, if you care about the Supreme Court, it's not a perfect choice, but you simply have one choice. If you want to start having different choices, go move to a European country. Go join a parliamentary system.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to go here, but we'll have you all back. For the moment, we got to go, though. So thanks for being with us. We'll be back in a moment with a political look at moms. Stay with us.